Ever wondered how a law firm generates business? Or how to choose the right candidate for your firm? Wanted to know how the legal landscape is changing? What is this legal tech that everyone keeps talking about? And where is the work-life balance in today's scenario? I, Anshul Gupta, the co-founder of Knight Legal, brings to you Raising the Bar. Your very real and candid take into the workings and insights of being in the legal business in the post-COVID world. In this podcast, I reach out to my colleagues in the legal fraternity to talk about all the questions you as a lawyer may ponder upon. As lawyers, we are all aware of POSH, what it means, how it's created in a firm, but do we know how it can get applied even if you're not in office? Which means how it can be applied remotely? The world around us is constantly changing, and so is the way we perceive our colleagues and employees. And that is what we're going to talk about in today's episode. Our guest today is someone who has not only led the POSH compliance movement in India, but has also revolutionized the way POSH is looked at into various organizations and the corporate world in India today. Hi Pallavi, so thanks a lot for giving your time today. It gives me a lot of excitement to welcome you officially to Raising the Bar, and specifically to talk about a very important topic that impacts us all today.
Hey, thank you so much, Anshul. Very, very happy to be here. And this is a topic which is too close to home, not just work, but even in terms of the personal beliefs and value system. So this is not work. I'm one of those people who is lucky enough to spend days doing exactly what excites me throughout the day. Very happy to be talking to you about it.
Awesome. So I think, we'll just jump right into it. So, would love to know, how did Ungender happen and what was really the story behind it? What was the inspiration for you?
So story is long, but I'll give you the snippets of the milestones that happened. So UNGENDER is actually my second venture. Before this, I was running a legal education company. But if you have to ask me where exactly the concept started, I think it started when I shifted from India to Philippines and saw a completely different part of the society. Saw a mix of, society which just knows how to appreciate the diversity that exists, not just in terms of gender and sex, but also in terms of people's backgrounds, where they come from, education, so many aspects associated with it. It was only, it was just inevitable that once I came back to India, you start looking at the world very differently. And when I came back to India, this was something that I really wanted to do. So UNGENDER is a name, of course, it's the brand that, that represents the work that we are doing. But it is also part of the value system wherein if we actually just start looking at the society and the world around us without the gender and sex lens, how would the world be? And how would the opportunities turn out to be for people? What kind of society, workplaces, homes, family setups, education system, clothes, everything for that matter. How will those be? I mean, even the cups that we use, the pinks and the blues. Imagine if these categories were not there. But the main point of actually finally venturing into it was December 2013, when the workplace sexual harassment law came into picture. And that was the time when, I told myself that this is a time that we should just start on this journey, because now instead of telling the workplaces that you should do something, now there's a have to in place.
Absolutely. So, to understand from you, why is POSH compliance so important? Because if you look at a lot of startups, boutique law firms out there who are just starting up, the idea is that, this can be delayed when the team is bigger. So what is your opinion on this bit, and why is it so important?
It's important because it's almost like eating healthy. You don't wait to become 20-year-old, or you don't wait to become a 10-year-old and say that now my child is ready to start eating healthy or thinking healthy. Living a healthy lifestyle, living a healthy habits, being fit, all these things are something that as a parent we want our child to know from day one, right? There's no age or growth metric specified with it. So when we look at workplaces, for us, it starts from day zero. Is a foundational DNA of any workplace. And the reason it's ironic, actually, it's part of my everyday conversation. But just yesterday also, I was having a conversation with one of the incubators and accelerators. And the same reason, the same conversation was flowing that startup founders do wait till the priorities have, changed or shifted. But funnily, priorities never change. You still have to grow your business. You still have to make revenue. You still have to grow your team. Amidst all these things, culture building, especially from the aspect of diversity and inclusion, inclusion and equity in the workplace, it's something that is envisioned or perceived as a luxury. We'll do it when we can afford it. Sadly, in the absence of metrics, numbers being missed, nobody knows when they will be ready. And that's how it keeps getting delayed. This year, it's like we'll do it 5 years down the line, 5 years down the line. It will be again 5 years down the line. So the external push, until and unless that comes in, most of the startups don't really start thinking about it from day zero. But survival should not mean that you ignore thinking healthy, thinking safe, thinking inclusion. That's just how the journey is at present.
I think, like you rightly mentioned, it's a need of the hour. I think you have to look at it just how important incorporating a company is. It's as important, because it's going to bite you towards later stage of the company if you don't focus on it. So I think
even right now, sorry to cut you, Anshul, but even right now it's biting startups or any organization. Yeah. It's just that the wound is not visible right now. Most of the time, startups, organizations don't even know what is wrong or how to actually even identify that, hey, this is something which is wrong with the organization, right? So it remains primarily as a blind spot for several founders until the wound is so big that either it will become visible in the form of some social media post or repeated bad reviews, negative reviews from the former employees on platforms like Glassdoor, or just word of the mouth that start traveling that hey, this is how the culture of this organization is. The pay is great and this is great and you will learn a lot, but. And those are the words that start framing those incomplete sentences. So the damage is still happening because of the blind spot. They just do not know how to identify. It's like, I don't know what I don't know.
Exactly. And I think that lays the foundation. My next question is, how do you even define sexual harassment, right? And the question of subjectivity really kicks in there. So what is your perspective on that?
See, it's a big gray. It's a million shades of gray, right? If we have to actually start thinking about what all could possibly mean in a workplace when we talk about workplace sexual harassment, from asking questions about whether somebody is married or not, or what their family plans are, to even something as small or as big, based on the perception and the way it is said, giving a compliment to somebody. Right. So at the end of the day, all these things can come under the category of workplace sexual harassment. But I do believe, and this belief is coming from decade-long work in this particular area, that somewhere a person always knows that it was something which was not really required to be said or asked in a workplace. Right. And even if this information was required, this could have been asked in some other manner. I'm giving you a small example. Most of the companies, when they're hiring, especially women, they want to know who's making decision in their family. If they're planning to get married, then will they relocate? If they have just recently gotten married, then what are their family plans? Now, what is the reason to ask these questions is to actually understand how long this talent is actually going to be part of your organization, or whether their decision is something that will get changed the minute something in their personal life changes, right? So if that is the reason why you need to know this information, I have seen so many other versions of questions which can provide you this information. One very amazing startup founder was actually doing a brilliant job at it. They will actually sit down with the candidate and just understand from them, hey, what are your 10-year plans? And if you choose to stay for 10 years in this organization, what are the things that you would expect from our end? This kind of open-ended question, putting the needs of the candidate primary, gave them the same information, right? The candidate themselves disclosed that, hey, 3 years down the line, this is what I'm planning to do. 5 years down the line, this might happen in my life. So I might require this kind of support, infrastructure, policies and processes in place. Both of them got what they needed and wanted, right? But the way it was said and the way it was asked was completely different, and at the same time respectable and dignified for both sides. Right? So when people say that, hey, these days we can't even ask women if they're planning to get married, or these days we can't even say if they look beautiful. Well, the problem is not that you can't say it. The problem is that why you need this question, why you need the answers to these questions, why you need to make this comment, and at the same time, in what manner you're saying it. See, the manner is problematic. Of course, I'm not talking about the most, the other obvious forms of sexual harassment. Of course, spanking somebody on the butt is sexual harassment. It's common sense. We don't know what can be said and what cannot be said. We don't want to hire women because, oh my God, if I, if my elbow just touches her, she can now file a complaint of sexual harassment. Well, make sure that your elbow doesn't touch her, right? It's as simple as that. And just adding another caveat to it, when people say that, but this is me. This is how we are. Are you telling us not to bring our natural self to work? The problem is not with your natural self, or the problem is not with your complete self. The problem is with that aspect of yourself that subconsciously or consciously realizes and recognizes in a certain hierarchical association, you can get away with it. So, for example, if somebody tells me that, I was just giving a compliment, or I was just saying that, hey, this is how it is. Well, will you say the same thing to somebody who is your senior, right? Then the answer is no, right? Or will you say something similar to, let's say, a potential client? The answer is no. So that means that you do realize somewhere that when you are supposed to say these things and not, right? The fear is what holds you back. So that process in which you think that, hey, I want to say this, and to the point that you actually blur it out, there is a process which actually knows how to filter things out. Why do we not use that filter? Right? We just consciously choose to switch off that filter because we know the other person will not say anything.
So it's not really subjective.
It's not really subjective. Two questions that can easily help anybody if they want to use it as a litmus test is, number one, whatever I'm going to say, do, behave like, is this a requirement of my job description? All of us understand what is a requirement of our job description, right? Yeah. Second thing, what I'm going to say, do, or how I'm going to behave, is this going to enhance the output that my work requires me to do? If the answer to either of these questions is no, then please don't do it, right? That's the simplest way to actually filter out and figure out whether you should be saying, doing, or behaving in a certain manner or not.
Got it. So have you seen a shift with, in the last 2 years, companies have started doing work from home, that's the future of work. So have you seen a shift in how companies tackle this particular problem, and how even, employees who are facing sexual harassment, how is it really looked at?
So first thing, the numbers have not changed. In fact, they have increased only drastically. I mean, a lot of our existing partner companies, as well as the upcoming ones, they keep asking us that, Pallavi, has it gone down? Now that people are working from home? It hasn't, because we're talking about the fundamental nature and thought process of human beings, right? And human beings are creative enough to find ways to let their natural self flow. So if the tendency is to ask intrusive question, just because you and I are not meeting in person will not stop me or you, right? We have WhatsApp, we have Slack, we have MS Team, we have all these platforms where we are interacting. You will find a way, I will find a way to still ask these intrusive questions. So one, nothing has changed. Work from home has not stopped or lessened the cases. That's one. Number two, how companies have been tackling it is in the initial few months post the lockdown, a lot of organizations were in denial that now that people are not coming to work, they are sitting at home, we won't really have to deal with this issue. But thankfully, because of some very conscious leadership and organization where they did not think like that, they continued with their awareness activities. Right? And they actually started having more dedicated conversations with their employees that just because you're not meeting, just because the person is not present in person, doesn't really mean that these questions or these behavior will only happen then. A contextual setting or a contextual understanding of what all workplace sexual harassment could be in remote work setup was initiated by a lot of these organizations, which allowed both the doer as well as the receiver to understand that, okay, this also gets covered under this. Right? So that has been a beautiful, positive thing, and kind of also restores your faith, right? That where 90 companies are not doing anything, these 10 are doing it, and eventually these 10 will grow to become 20, 30, 40. Third is the challenge is real, Anshul, because especially when cases happen, earlier the investigations used to be in person, and there's a lot that you get to absorb, right? The body language, microaffirmations, and basically micro communication, the cues that you can pick up, questioning is easier and more conducive. And now in the remote work setup, it's become slightly difficult to do the investigations. Yes, they are happening, but the operational hurdles of executing these investigations is something which has created a new learning curve for companies and made it more difficult for confidentiality and other aspects of the investigation to be monitored. But all in all, I will say that work from home, remote setup, having companies to understand or letting companies understand that just because people are not coming to office doesn't mean that the problem is gone. There's a positive side to see, and all thanks to these amazing organizations. I mean, we exist because conscious leaders exist, right? You can't push or force people to do things. Otherwise, it's just check in the box.
Got it. So, Pallavi, a lot of leaders, managing partners of law firms do want to, take the step forward and make the firm, very inclusive, but they not really are aware about what are the steps to be taken when it comes to POSH, diversity. So, what would be your recommendation for a managing partner when they look at these things?
So firstly, I would say that we are working and advising a lot of law firms, and that's actually one segment that I individually, as well as the entire team at Ungender, takes a lot of pride in, because yes, just because your law firm doesn't really mean that you're good at everything, right? So even these law firms have realized, and all because of the managing partners, right? These law firms have realized that, hey, we are good at this particular side of law, but doesn't really mean that we know this also. So they've brought in an expert. One advice definitely would be that it's okay if you know the law, right? You may be a doctor and you may be an eye specialist, but doesn't really mean that you can be a ENT also, right? Just because they are closer to each other. So there's an area of specialization. So first and foremost, please find an expert and get that person on board so that you can actually understand what all it means. Second, walk the talk, right? What the segment that you're talking about, Anshul, are the law firm partners or managing partners who are conscious, right? But I won't say this is just for the law firm industry, but this applies to all the organizations. How many will actually say that we want to do this, or we need to do this, or we would like to do this in a different manner or in a proper manner? When I say walk the talk, this means that law firms are advising their clients to abide by the law and do things right. Somewhere law firms have to take that stance for themselves also and say that, hey, we are not diverse enough. We are not inclusive enough. We don't really think that there's an equitable environment. That's the question that law firms really need to start asking themselves, because I've been part of this industry as an outsider for close to 10 years now. Not everything is hunky-dory there, right? It's not at all. And we have a lot of interns, law students talking about it. We have lawyers talking about it. It's high time that we say that, hey, within the industry also, while as an industry, as a unit, we are telling companies how they should protect themselves, what do the law ask them to do. We also need to apply the same thing to ourselves.
Got it. So, for a lot of our listeners out there who are, law students, just entering into the, legal, firms, etc. How does one know and, where to draw the line if a boss or a co-worker, even a client is making you uncomfortable, and how to really tackle, how do you really go about that?
One thing is, it's easy to say for anybody that speak up. It's very easy to say. And that's one thing that I will advise as the first thing. But at the same time, I'm also very cognizant of the fact that it will not be possible for each and every person to speak up or to put an end to it or say stop. And, all these things that we tell each other, that whenever there's something wrong happening, what was stopping you from speaking? There are 1,000 reasons why it will stop you from speaking up. But if you can, right, do speak up. But first and foremost, you have to recognize it also, right? Law students, especially the ones who are graduating, or the ones who are now just fresh in the law firm or the legal profession. I'll go back to the law firm fraternity, right? We expect that they will know all the laws. They don't. Even they don't know, right? And they need to first understand that what are the different categories or actions or behavior or questions that can come my way And or I can extend both ways, right? We're talking about both ways. The law on the respondent side or on the perpetrator side has said that sexual harassment can happen from a woman also to a woman. We first need to know what are all the actions that can be done, right? School was fine, college was fine, but when we step into the workplace now, what are those behavior that we really need to step aside? So educating oneself is the first step, I would say, because education of let's say POSH Act 2013 for law student has happened as a subject, right? Has not happened as a beneficiary. So they need to first distinguish that, hey, I studied it as a subject, but I haven't really gone into the depth of it, that how it affects me, right? And it affects us on everyday basis, right? So first step is educate so that you would know as and when something wrong is happening. Second, speak up if you can speak up. But if for some reason you're not able to speak up, find help to understand how you can navigate this entire speaking up, because there are so many of us out there who have gone through similar. And while this 37, 38-year-old me can say that now if somebody does this to me, I know how to tackle it. 21 or 19-year-old me actually did not know, right? So exchange this experience with people who have gone through this so that they can tell you different tactics of going about it. You have to find your community, because there's a strength in numbers. It's very important that if you are going through it, please don't think that you have to go through it alone. Find somebody, find people who are also going through the same thing, because most of the time when we are experiencing it, you will go in this self-blame or self-doubt. The world will ask you 1,000 questions, the world will throw 1,000 blames at you. So finding your community and making sure that you don't go into that guilt, because it takes years to get out of that guilt, right? So get it as soon as possible so that you know that you're just focusing on what went wrong and not thinking about what you contributed to it when this was happening. So these are the three things that I would strongly advise. Other than that, they're always welcome to reach out and happy to help and guide.
Great, great. So, Pallavi, we would love for you to actually break down and go into detail of what diversity, inclusion even means, and perhaps even share a few examples of companies you see personally that have done this really well.
So every workplace, I look at every workplace as a zoo only. Okay, we it may be that there are some birds, and then it may be that there are some monkeys. Okay, what we need to understand is that even if we are putting them in two categories, birds and what other one would you say? Let's say tigers or cats,
Sure.
Birds and cats. Okay, two different categories. The same way right now workplaces is in male and female. Even in the male and female, we sometimes forget to understand that just because somebody is a male doesn't really mean that all male are like that only. Same thing for the female also. Now, when I say that the world is a zoo and every workplace is a zoo, we actually have different kinds of animals and creatures in a workplace, right? That's the diversity that we are talking about, that each one is unique, each one has different need, each one has a different background, each one needs to be given different meal, even each one has a different requirement for their nutrition, for their growth, even the environment, right? The amount of water that I need in a day may be different from another one.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking about when we say diversity, right? People being different from each other. It could be because of race, color, age, gender, cultural background, socioeconomic background, and so on and so forth. Ableism, ageism, and so on and so forth. So that's the diversity, if I have to put it. That's how we need to understand diversity. Now comes the inclusion part. Inclusion is basically that all of us are able to coexist. That each one of us are not killing each other. That means that you are different, I'm different, and I respect you for your difference, and you respect me for my difference, right? We are aware of it, and we know our boundaries, and we respect those boundaries. So coexistence is happening. And with coexistence, we are also able to grow together. That's inclusion. Each person's individual needs are identified and respected and provided for. So this is what you mean by inclusion. Now, if you have to go the third level, which is equity. Equity basically means it's what is being provided from the organization. That means that what your unique needs are, they are provided for, and the challenges for you and the growth parameter or the growth pace for you has been created, keeping your positives and not so positives, your limitations and your strengths in mind. That's what we call equity. Right, so I remember this very famous and also very apt one. You can't ask all the animals to climb the tree. You can't, because not all of them do that, right? So if I have to give you a challenge, I'll create a different challenge for you, and you will still be able to grow, because I recognize this is your strength and these are your limitations. That's what we call equity. That just because I'm not able to run as fast as you are, I will not be able to grow in the organization. This is how, in the easiest manner you can understand diversity, inclusion, and equity. Tell me if you want me to simplify it further.
No, I think the zoo example was fairly simple. I think that was very aptly put also. Following from that, why is it so important for firms to even look at diversity? The focus on diversity has come, recently, as opposed to if you look at, let's say, 8-10 years ago. So why so much importance on that?
So the focus has come in, Anshul, because the world is spending so much time on internet. On TV, people were not talking about it, and TV is also a little bit more localized, right? But because of social media, because of this entire internet world that we are living in, I mean, we meet more people and we speak to more people. In fact, we even have more friends that we have met on social media than we have people in real life, right? So our world has switched, and there the news circulation and the conversation is happening at a very large level. So today, sitting here, I will get to know what's happening in Bangladesh, what's happening in US, Texas, Mississippi, Philippines, Singapore, and so on and so forth. And everyone knows also that eventually all of us have to work together, because the remote working and at the same time, everyone just does not want to stay doing business in their own country only. Everyone is working in different, global collaborations. So that's number one. The conversation has not become important because the time has come. The conversation has become important because it's more visible in front of us. Earlier also it was happening, but in a hushed manner. Would you know what was happening or what conversation was happening in the next state? You wouldn't know. Yeah. Would you know what was happening in Singapore 5 years ago? You would not know on these topics. But now we know, because if you have put in this hashtags and if you're following certain channels and subscribers, you have access to this news. So that's one. Number two, diversity has always been a conversation. I'll not say that it's just happening 5 years or 10 years ago. It has always been a conversation. I mean, as old as 50 years that we have been talking about it. The thing is, actively for the workplaces. In fact, India has older laws, laws older than 50 years, which actually promote women participation and their comfort in the workplace. What's sad is that we have not really implemented them. So that's a separate category of discussion altogether. This has always been the conversation. What has changed and what has updated now, which a lot of people fail to do or understand, is that when we started the conversation of diversity, we just started talking about cis women. And that time also we did not even distinguish between cis women and women. We were just saying women. Yeah. We were just talking about women. So even right now, the minute somebody will start talking about diversity, you will say that they will start flaunting that, oh, we have so many women in our team and we have this and we have that. Well, you have one kind of diversity. Great, right? But that doesn't really mean that you are a diverse organization. You have women or cis women diversity in your team, right? So when you say diversity, it has so many spectrums that complete understanding of the definition is what we are catching up to now. That because sometimes I look at companies and they say, oh, we are not diverse, and I'm like, but look at the variant of generational diversity in yours. Like, but we don't have any women. It's okay. So what you're feeling sad about is you don't have gender or cis women diversity in your team, but don't say that you do not have diversity in your team. Yeah. Right? You have a diversity which comes under the category of ageism. Okay, so generational diversity is what you have. That's one. Second, why it has become important is because everyone is talking about it and everyone is aware that they're talking about it. The demand side has also started asking these questions. There have been so many studies and surveys that are already giving these strong recommendations to companies, to workplaces, that hey, the future of work requires you to be diverse and inclusive, because the next generation of talent that you would like to have part of your team is going to demand this, and that's why you have to start it as early as yesterday, because the train has already left the station. Like, you have to already start preparing for it. The third reason why it has come is because thankfully there are enough evidences that suggest and also finally prove that thinking about diversity, equity and inclusion is not something that you're doing for the society. आप समाज के लिए नहीं कर रहे हैं. You're doing it because there is a strong business case in it. Why? You need different people for different kind of ideas. If everybody agrees with you, then you will continue doing the same thing that you were doing in the past or even right now. So you need that diversity of thought, ideas, execution, which allows you to do things maybe in a much more efficient manner. That's one, right? Different way of thinking is required. Second, if you have diversity in your team, right, it also allows you to create products and services to cater to a diverse market. You will see so many ads sometimes, which you will, especially for the gender related cis women and cis men related advertisements, wherein at the end of the advertisements, you're like, even in today's time, we are still doing this. Even in today's time, I mean, we are in 2021 right now. And we are still, why that happens? Because nobody told them that, hey, the time has changed. Nobody in the team was there to actually bring a new perspective, or nobody in the team was there to say that I represent this particular group that you're trying to target. And this group does not buy things if this is how you're going to sell them. So that's what happens then. That in order to actually cater to that market, that diverse market, you really need to have a production, your in-house team, which is able to think like that. And because of these three things, there's a strong business case that has come out of it, which was already there. But now we have case studies to prove it. Now we have numbers to showcase. And slowly organizations are waking up to the fact that, yes, this was a blind spot and we need to work on it.
But I think one, for me personally, what was very interesting is the point that you made, that diversity is not just about having the other gender be part of your team, but even in the same gender, there can be a lot of diversity. And I think that's a very good point that a lot of people don't even realize that, diversity is beyond just the gender quotient. So I think that's a very interesting point that you made.
This reminds me, one time I was talking to a startup founder and I was like, I don't really see, they were telling me about their hiring pattern and everything. And I just said that, but where's the diversity? And they were like, oh, come on, Pallavi, now don't start this. Where are the women? I said, no, I'm not even talking about women. You just told me that you're either hiring people from the workplaces that you have worked in, or the college that you have studied, or your core team has studied from, because you think the best talent comes out of there only, or you are hiring people who are in your first or second or third degree of contact. So if you actually sit down, there's the same profile of people who is coming out. So where is the diversity? Now, this is something that people need to understand, that how are you actually going to even achieve diversity if there's this bias that every time somebody says diverse, you think that, oh, now they're going to talk about bringing women into, our team. So that bias also needs to be eliminated, right? People have forgotten to, one, they have acquired the wrong definition. Second, they have forgotten to click that update button that, hey, my definition needs to be updated. That's not what it is.
Got it. So Pallavi, quickly want to, understand from you 3 points that, from me being a startup founder, managing partners out there, what are 3 points which we should really focus on if you want to make a very good workplace for our team, a comfortable workplace for the entire organization?
First and foremost, at the you first need to understand, which is actually a foundational thing. So I will not count it as the first thing, but you as a leader need to take this stand. When I say need to take this stand, it's like that. Don't leave it on your HR to make your team diverse. Don't leave it on somebody else. It has to start from you only, and it has to be part of your organization's DNA. This is not something that you will just accidentally become. This is something that requires a design. The same way you focus on your sales strategies, the same way a founder focuses on how we will generate more leads. The same way you need to approach becoming a DEI aligned organization, and it should be part of your metrics, agendas, quarterly reviews, and so on and so forth. That's number one. But because it is the foundational one, also declare it. I see a lot of founders and leaders actually not declaring it because they think that if they will declare it, then suddenly there will be expectations from the team members, because now people can hold you accountable to it. So a fearless declaration, telling your team, and if you want to tell the world, also tell the world, because if you tell the world, you will be surprised how many people are out there to help you out with this collaboration and other things, right? So that's one. Start from the top and declare it fearlessly. Number two is measure it. There is a way to measure it. There is a way to actually identify whether you are where you are reaching on that journey. So set milestones and do a quarterly or monthly or annual review and check on this, which will require you to also set a budget aside, right? So don't think that this is going to be something which is not required. How we look at certain cash outflows in a business and say that no, this is not expense, this is an investment, because you know that the return is going to be so much higher. That is what this budget should be set aside as. It's an investment that you're making because you're going to get a return also in it. Third thing I would say is that please don't approach it as an art. Someday you do something and another day you do something. It's not a patchwork. It's not something that you do as a quick fix or as a fad fix, I would say. The reason I'm saying fad fix is because just because it's Pride Month doesn't mean that you have to go and put a pride color. Don't do that also, because that's more counterproductive to what you could actually do. Approach it as a very structured area of business operations that you should be looking at it. So these three things is what I would suggest that startup founders and leaders should be doing. Of course, in order to do these three things, you will need an expert, you will need to find somebody to do things. That goes without saying it, because you cannot do everything. So how you will hire experts and professionals for sales and products and operations, you need to do the same for this as well.
Got it. So I think the starting point is to even think that, okay, how do I make it more diverse? How do I make it more inclusive? I think that is the first step to even achieving the goal.
Don't even do that, Anshul. I will say that just say that I want to do this, and be clear with that. The how part will anyway come later. Most of the time things don't move because the founders are spending time realizing, how will I do this? You will not know how to do this because it's a very new way of thinking. And you are also a product of your conditioning. I'm also a product of my conditioning, right? So somebody needs to come and tell me that this is how you go about it.
Right.
And don't approach all kinds of diversity at one go. It's okay to go step by step. It's absolutely okay to say that, okay, this is by this milestone, I will make sure that this category of diversity is done. Like we know that, okay, even if you want to start with cis women, by the year this, we would make sure that our organization has the diversity of this particular category. They are feeling included, and then they're growing also. Check. Then you start replicating. You can't be diverse, inclusive, and equitable for all categories there.
So Pallavi, I like to give you a very interesting situation. I'm sure a lot of people out there have struggled with this. Imagine there's a person who's been outperforming all his targets, has been bringing tremendous revenue to the organization, but you realize that, he or she isn't really respectful to the teammates. There have been issues in conduct. So how does, the leader really deal with this scenario?
So you're saying the person is doing good, but...
So from a business standpoint, they're beating their targets, but from a conduct perspective, it's not great, disrespectful to their teammates. So how does a leader really look at this situation, and how do you really go beyond this?
Yeah, that's a mistake that happens most of the time whenever companies are hiring, right? We are hiring for the output that they will generate or the revenues that they will bring. But we also have to understand that this is not really sustainable, right? At the end of the day, what kind of team or what kind of organization do I want to build? Yes, this one person is productive. This person is actually checking all the boxes when it comes to their target. But what about their team? You will actually notice that under this kind of leadership, attrition is higher.
Yeah.
Employees' experience of the work environment is extremely low. People are demotivated. They're also not getting recognized. And even if these three things don't check in, these are the kind of leaders which are getting cultivated, because by allowing this kind of leadership to prevail in that particular department, function, area, location, wherever it is, whatever it is, the signal that the leadership is sending to those people is that this is what is celebrated in our organization. So even if those people who are actually not aligned with this behavior will start adopting and absorbing these behavior traits, because as a leader, by keeping this person in your organization, you're actually telling the rest of the members that this is what I need if you have to grow in the organization, right? Yes, so achieve targets, do anything, but whatever it takes, right? And if even if it means toxicity in the work environment, then sure, as long as business is growing, we don't really care.
Yeah.
And it will also backfire after some time. 1 year, 2 years, 10 years down the line. Why do you see we hear of instances and incidents when people say 10 years ago this happened? It's just a volcano waiting to be erupted. So if you can talk to that person directly and get them to understand what your priority is as a leader, what is acceptable to you and what is not acceptable to you, great. And if they're willing to work on it, provide all sorts of assistance to do that. But if that's not going to be the case, then as a leader, you have to make a decision. What kind of organization and what kind of culture do you want to build? This is something that I tell all the founders and actually all the leaders, right? I get it. Customer comes first. Great. Yes, we all know that saying, right? Customer comes first. But at the end of the day, your employees are required to even cater to those customers.
Yeah.
How will you cater to those customers if you don't have employees who are there day and night, or whenever it is required, going beyond their time schedules or even the standard mandate to make sure that the customer does come first? You alone cannot run an organization. You alone cannot build a business. So you do need your employees.
Yeah.
So it's okay if customer is God, but your employees should always come first. And that's the mantra, at least I always tell people, and we have been lucky enough to work with leaders like those.
So Pallavi, you've worked with a bunch of companies, bunch of law firms, looked at various scenarios. If I ask you today, what is one thing that you truly wish, a law firm or a company out there would do or comply? What would be that one thing in your opinion?
Wow, there are so many things. Now I have to think of one thing. Yeah, so I think, I believe denial that we don't need it, something that we need to get rid of. When I say get rid of, it doesn't mean that just because you're saying that we don't know means that you are not great at what you're doing as a leader. You are still great. But this denial that we don't need it, or this cannot happen in our workplace, or we haven't heard it until today, so we are sure that this is not part of our organization. There's so many reasons for denial that it doesn't allow them to even let anybody like me or any other, individual who wants to say that, hey, perhaps this is also a perspective that you should look at. It prevents them from opening up their mind to this particular problem. So just acknowledging or just even realizing that, hey, maybe there is something that I do not know. Get out of this denial mode. is the first step to anything and everything else. Because if I have to say that, hey, set aside budget, no, there are some ways in which even with a very low budget you can do so many amazing things,
Yes.
right? I mean, you don't need a budget to actually start declaring your pronouns. Giving you a
Yeah.
very small example, right? Zero budget activity,
Yeah.
but what an amazing messaging it would be, not just for your internal but also external communications. So no, not the budget part. Getting an expert, even that, no, because some of these things are basic common sense. You just have
Mhm.
to start thinking like that.
Yeah.
So recognizing that you're in denial, and actually getting out of that denial, asking yourself this question that, hey, what is it that I do not know?
So do you think is the denial by leaders is one of the challenges that we have organizations face, or generally from your perspective people face to implement POSH in India? Do you think denial is that one thing, key thing?
Denial is one that key thing, and so there are two categories. One, who are in denial, who I would say that they're not yet ready to actually hear this thing out or even start on this journey. Second is the ones who actually know that it needs to be done but are waiting for the right time. Right time is like a right person. Right time is like the right job. Right
Yeah.
time. Nobody knows what that right time is, right?
Yeah.
For the first category, yes, denial is the one. For the second category, who know that yes, this is something which is important, but they're waiting for the right time. The right time could be maybe a global expansion where the global counterpart is now asking them to put some DEI policies in place. The right time could be another case on Me Too that just happened in their similar industry. But I have seen startup ecosystem becomes very vigilant about POSH compliance whenever there is another, founder or another
Yeah.
company in the startup ecosystem which is talking about it. Law firms became very cognizant of it when there were complaints a couple of last year when there was a complaint from some law students on the same ground. That's actually not a right time. That's the wrong time. But sure, they think that this is the right time, that okay, now that people are talking
Yeah.
about it, we should do something also. And the worst is, for some companies, the right time comes when they think, when a case has happened in their own workplace, that's when they start
Yeah.
looking for it. So these two things are what is preventing. The right time is today. And I'll go back to my eating healthy and being healthy
Yeah.
part. I was talking to somebody a long time ago, and they were saying that, when somebody tells me eat healthy and live healthy, do you know how expensive fruits are? Do you know how expensive gym membership is? Do you know how expensive this is and that is? Actually, honestly speaking, you don't even need to get a gym membership to start living healthy. You
Yeah.
don't even need to buy those expensive fruits to start eating healthy. As long as you can just eat on time, sleep on time, and so many other things that you can do on your own to take care of it. There's this luxury element that is associated, or the expensive element which is associated with starting on this journey, is also preventing a lot of these organizations that the right time will come when we will have lots of money to spare for this.
So, Pallavi, as a, startup founder, I must say this has been truly enlightening for me. It has given me a lot of perspective about, what POSH is all about. One very interesting and exciting thing that personally for me was how you connected the concept or implementation of diversity directly with, business numbers, right? And a lot of startup leaders, managing partners can now actually see that, investing in team, investing in diversity can actually lead to, revenue uptake. And I think, like you mentioned, the time is now. I think these are issues that everyone needs to really focus on strongly and with a lot of empathy, right? And I think, it's people like you, who've created Ungender, who are actually helping companies become more aware, and also helping teams of those companies have a better workplace. To all our listeners out there, please reach out to Pallavi. Do follow Ungender for any, questions around POSH, any help that you need around this topic also. And Pallavi, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate this, and for you being part of Raising the Bar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anshul. And I'll just say one closing statement, that any company who wants to be part of the future of work, either you start working on your DEI activities today, or just consider yourself packed up, because the future of work is inclusive, is going to be diverse, and is going to demand equity. So if you are not aligned with that, then you won't be relevant in the future. That's about it.
Great. Thanks, Pallavi. Thanks so much for your time.
Take care. Bye.
India just got its first openly gay judge few months back. The hashtag #MeToo movement allowed a lot of women to speak about their obstacles in the workplace, about harassment, and allow them to get an opportunity to heal and be brave. This shows that India, while still far from the goal, is in the right direction. And this is me hoping that we can create safe workplaces for all, where there can be more ideas kicking in and mutual respect for all. For now, this is Anshul Gupta signing off, and do follow Raising the Bar.